Now, hacker and activist Jeremy Hammond will spend the next decade behind bars. The anonymous group member was found guilty of computer fraud after breaking into an intelligence firm's servers and then giving its information to Wikileaks. Hammond says he did it because he wanted the people to know what the government does behind closed doors. RT's Anastasia Churkina was outside the courtroom.
After a 2-hour hearing in a packed courtroom in the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, 28-year-old activist and hacker Jeremy Hammond was sentenced to 120 months behind bars. He's going to spend the next decade in jail. In March 2012, Hammond was arrested for breaking into 200 gigabytes of 5 million emails of information of private security firm Stratfor and leaking this information to transparency organization Wikileaks. In these emails, it was revealed that the private security firm was spying on human rights activists upon the request of corporation and the U.S. government. Earlier, Hammond had pled guilty to 1 count of the Computer Abuse and Fraud Act.
This was a classic case of whistleblowing where malfeasance and criminal activity by a private corporation on behalf of both corporations and the government was exposed.
The government and the judge felt that the idea of causing mayhem or causing destruction was incompatible with Jeremy's stated political goals, and we disagree with that.
Some of Hammond's supporters have dubbed him the Robin Hood of our times. The defense team inside the courtroom argued that he fought for the better good, trying to bring about real change to the system and shed more light on what the U.S. government was doing. The prosecution, however, said that he stole the numbers of 60,000 credit cards, causing a damage of $1 to $2.5 million to businesses and individuals.
If people who have influence and people who care do not stand up and defend people like Jeremy, the judge said that he is not, a Mandela or Dr. King. I was a civil rights activist. Jeremy is every much as a progressive humanist, as the spirit of those leaders, as we said in the defense.
He was motivated by his political beliefs, his desire for transparency, and his desire to highlight what's wrong with the private security industry and with government surveillance.
A total of 265 letters from journalists, activists, human and constitutional rights groups were sent to the judge asking for Jeremy Hammond to be released. Also, 36 prominent freedom of information activists sent their request to the courthouse. However, the huge public support for Jeremy Hammond did not affect the judge's decision.
Jeremy Hammond, Edward Snowden, Chelsea Manning, this is all one struggle, and we all need to rise up and let people know the truth.
If we don't have Jeremy Hammonds, if we don't have Edward Snowdens, if we don't have Chelsea Mannings, Barrett Browns, we don't have a free press.
This sentence comes on the heels of the NSA scandal, continuing the debate on what should and should not be kept secret in the U.S. and for how long the unprecedented war on whistleblowers will continue, as well as the war on freedom of information. Anastasia Churkina, RT, New York.
Now let's discuss this case with David Seaman. He is an independent journalist and in a unique position to be one of the hundreds of people that signed a letter asking the judge to be lenient. Jeremy, thank you very much for, actually David, thank you very much for being with us. Speaking of Jeremy, he took information from tens of thousands of credit cards which were used by Anonymous to make donations, and he is a repeat hacking offender. What about that sentence is not fair?
Thanks for having me on the show. Thanks for bringing this to your viewers' attention. I would say there are actually a couple of elements to this story that supersede that credit card number aspect of his trial and his case. The first thing is that he was approached by an FBI informant. This came out in an article in Wired magazine earlier this morning. This FBI informant is apparently the one who, quote-unquote, cheerled Jeremy into hacking into this organization. This FBI informant also allegedly gave him a list of other targets that Jeremy should go after and which he did not go after. And once he received the information, he apparently downloaded it to an FBI-controlled server at the request of this FBI informant. So if this was basically an FBI operation, they should have probably sent him a paycheck instead of sending him to prison for the next 10 years. Just to put this into context for viewers, 10 years ago was 2003. So think about where you were and what you were doing in 2003, and then all the way up till today. That's how much time this 28-year-old is going to be spending behind bars. His life is over. The judge received nearly 300 letters from prominent activists and journalists. I was asked to send in a letter. I normally don't do that stuff because I am just a reporter. I'm not an activist. But in this case, I thought it was so egregious what they were doing to him that I did send in a letter. And I had some belief that the system would accommodate this and would take into account not only the 20 months that he's already served, but the fact that he was acting out of political conscience, the fact that what he leaked revealed a degree of wrongdoing that's in the public interest to know about. So I was totally shocked that they went with the full 10 years, the maximum possible. That's an outrage. This judge represents everything wrong with the American justice system today. And I get it, you know, the prison industrial complex. Well, we need to keep those prisons full with young people to keep private prison profits up. But this guy doesn't belong in prison for 10 years next to murderers and rapists. He just doesn't. And also America is facing a brain drain right now.
Well,
we are the inventors of the internet, some of the biggest tech companies in the world. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you mentioned this judge and representing everything that's wrong with the system. The judge was married to a Stratford client who said that he was affected by what Hammond did. Isn't this a clear case of a conflict of interest, if there ever was one?
Thanks for bringing that up. That was my next point. Exactly. I mean, this is supposed to be a totally impartial judge, you know, just weighing the pros and cons of what Jeremy Hammond has done. If her husband was personally affected by this hack and he's a client of the company that was hacked into, she should have recused herself. There was an article about this in Salon. She did not do so. It's outrageous. At least in countries like Mexico, you know that the judges and the law enforcement agencies are corrupt. But here in America, we don't believe that. We believe that our judges are held to a higher standard. And that's part of where this outrage is coming from. Aside from the fact that she ignored those nearly 300 letters, the outrage is stemming from the fact that out of all the judges in this country, she is not the most impartial one out there. And I honestly lost my train of thought. This makes me so upset.
That's all right. Well,
I think that, what I was saying before is that we're facing a brain drain in America. We have the largest tech companies, Google and Apple. We need as many smart people as possible to innovate. This is a brilliant guy. He's a guy who's 28 years old, is clearly brilliant. And if he was, you know, impressionable and an FBI informant who's charismatic, is telling him to do something and he does it, that needs to be taken into consideration by the judge, and apparently it wasn't. And also, instead of being behind bars, he should be working for one of America's tech companies. He's a very smart guy. We need people like that. And we gave the world the internet, and now we're kind of destroying it with the NSA revelations. We supposedly weaponize the internet. And
David, I have a quick question for you.
Like Jeremy Hammond. Incidentally, this... Sure.
Well, yeah, the Obama administration has kind of gone after whistleblowers in an unprecedented fashion. Do you think that this case, as well as others, are going to discourage more people from stepping forward, or do you think that this is just all part of a crackdown and it will work? If you could answer in brief.
I think that it definitely discourages some people, but I think that it also angers enough people that it might do the exact opposite of what the Obama administration is hoping for. And we saw the co-founder of Reddit, Aaron Swartz, another brilliant young guy, committed suicide when he was charged under the same outdated law, the CFAA, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, which many in Congress want to get rid of because this thing was designed, it was written before the internet even existed. It's being abused by the government to silence innovative people and to intimidate them. We shouldn't be silencing guys like Jeremy Hammond. We should be giving them jobs. I mean, he's an innovator. Granted, he hacked into something, but at the behest of the government.
All right. Appreciate your thoughts on the subject. It certainly is something that gets people riled up. Thank you for being with us, journalist David Seaman from Los Angeles, if I'm not mistaken. You're on RT.